Hello, welcome back to this session on searching and critical analysis of evidence-based literature. In this section, we will talk about developing your PICO question and using that question to search for literature in the library databases. So first off, with the help of your instructor, you will develop a PICO question. The PICO question is a tool that's used to research for questions that you develop regarding a clinical issue or problem. So first off, it is broken into parts generally, where you might identify a patient, problem, or population. You would look at an intervention. Maybe a comparison intervention will also be evaluated. And then you'll consider an outcome for that intervention. Sometimes a time element is added to the question, but it is not always used or required that time be a part of it. Next, you're going to search the literature. The first part of that is going to be looking at your question and considering a number of items to develop your search strategy. So some things we'll look at are using keywords or subject headings, using alternative words that we call synonyms, the use of Boolean operators and or not, and then some other tricks in the databases you can use called truncation and phrase searching using quotes. First, let's talk about what is the difference between using a keyword and a subject heading. So the keywords used in searching the databases are just the natural language words that we would normally use to describe any topic. These are always good to start with, and generally what most students will use to gain access to the literature. You will also see something called subjects or subject headings, which is the predefined vocabulary that databases use to describe the contents of a piece of literature, be it a book or journal article. Using a keyword is more flexible than using a subject heading because you have to have a little bit more knowledge about searching the databases to use subject headings. When using keywords in a search, the database will search every field of a record in the database. So a literature record, say for a journal article. So it will look in the title field, the abstract field, the author field, etc. Where the subject heading searching method only will look for the designated subject heading in that subject heading field of the article record. Often when using keywords, you might get a lot of results because they're more broad, whereas subject headings will give you a more focused and narrower search. Also, keywords might yield many irrelevant results because some words mean the same thing as another word that we're not intending, whereas the subject headings are usually very relevant because they're used as a descriptor in the database. So the different databases have different subject heading or controlled vocabulary, or what we call a thesaurus, for each database. So PubMed, Medline, and Cochrane use a subject heading list called MESH, or medical subject headings, while CINAHL simply calls their thesaurus CINAHL headings. When you're searching in EBSCO, you will often see those subject heading lists underneath the abstract when you look at your results. In PubMed, you might see them in an additional page of result. After the result, you look at the results. No matter where you see them, they are not only useful as the subject heading, but sometimes give you ideas for other words you can use as a simple keyword search because it provides you access to words you might not have considered before in your search and help you broaden your search. It is not required to search using either method, keywords or subject headings. Of course, you need to use one of those versions. Your goal is to find the literature the best way you can and the most efficient way that you can. And it's always helpful to reach out to a librarian if you are struggling on what terms to use in your search. When considering synonyms, be broad about that. Do some brainstorming about what a good synonym might be. In this example, I'm using leadership was my main term, but I might consider management, administration, guidance, or governance as alternatives. It's even helpful to ask your class colleagues, your instructor, for other sorts of terminology. Reach out to the librarians. Even using the MS Word thesaurus might be helpful in thinking about other terminology to use. All of the databases do use a mathematical means to gain access to the literature and to using the search strategy to tell the database how to search for the terms. This is called Boolean. When using the AND operator between words, that is where you will find a smaller set of results because both terms have to be found in the results. So in this case, in cancer and fatigue, you have to find both cancer and fatigue in all of the articles that turn up in the results page. As opposed to using the OR operator, for example, in insomnia or sleep disorders, using this method is using like an either-or situation where some articles might have insomnia, some may say sleep disorders, or some may use both terms within the article. So your results list is much larger. Sometimes not is used. This is when you want to eliminate a term. So my example shows yoga, but you don't want those yoga practices that include meditation. So you would use not to eliminate the term meditation. Some other database tricks you can use and that apply pretty much throughout all the databases we use here would be truncation, which is just a shorthand way of searching your keywords by including an asterisk at the root of the word at the end. So in the case of this example, elder asterisk would allow the database to search elder or elders or elderly without you having to type all of that out. Phrase searching is very helpful, and that's probably used way more than truncation. And that's where you want words to show up in the same order as you intend and together. And this will reduce some of your results as well because the database will search for those two terms together or two or more terms together and without the database searching for separate terms like hip and arthroplasty throughout a document. There's many other tips in the databases, and you can simply find those by always looking back at the help contents of every database. They will give you more guidance on different ways you can search. So let's go back to the PICO model. So my example here for my question is around are hospital required infections reduced through hand washing? So my PICO is hospital acquired infection. My intervention is hand washing. In this case, I am not using a comparison intervention, so that would be a placebo. And my goal is to reduce infections. First off, I break out my P and I and consider the synonyms I might use. And those examples are here. And this is just through brainstorming. I want to point out on the right side under the intervention, hand washing can be treated as one word or two words, so that's something to consider sometimes. You'll also note the blue terms at the very bottom of each column. Those were found by looking at the subject headings for some articles. So rather than using them as subject headings, I simply added those as keywords. You also see I added the Boolean operator OR, which I would use between all of the synonyms because it doesn't matter to me which synonym is used by the author. I just want one of those. And then linking the AND between the P and I part of my PICO question brings both of those sets of terminology together to be revealed in the results. I always tell students to start out broad, using your population or problem and your intervention to start with. Then, as you search more, you can add your outcome or, include your comparison. It's always good to just have a broad look at the literature first and then just add things as you go along. And that includes adding in your, date ranges, whether you want peer-reviewed literature or not, and so on. Once you get your search strategy developed, the next step would be to choose what database you want to search. So typically, like I mentioned before, we're going to look at the cumulative index to nursing and allied health, Medline, PubMed, Cochrane, and so on. So first step would be to go to the library website or the Nursing Research Guide and select the database. I happen to have some of the popular ones on the first page, as well as on that evidence-based practice tab I mentioned earlier. So once you click on the link, you'll come to what we call the advanced search page, and you'll see the 3 search boxes there for you. So I've already input the terminology I want to use for the search. In our EBSCO databases, once you start typing into these search boxes, it's going to start giving you terms to pick from sometimes. So it is okay to go ahead and pick those terms as your search terms because it often supplies synonyms that will be helpful to you. For the demonstration here, I'm just providing the terms already selected for you. Then you can choose if you need to add any other what we call filters or limits. So you can see below on this screen there's a number of choices. So I do know I want to choose English language because that's the language I read in. Peer-reviewed studies are very important for nursing. Because we're looking for high level of evidence practice literature, we are also going to want to choose the evidence-based practice limit. The publication dates we typically use for nursing topics is the last 5 years, so I'm also going to check that. And that's all I'm going to check right now. I always caution people not to check too many things at once so that you don't inadvertently limit yourself too much. You can always add more filters and limits once you run the initial search. So with that, I'm going to click the search button. And then you see I have my results here. So in the results, you can just take a look down and see if any are interesting. You're going to see some results that have the words in the title that include things like systematic review and meta-analysis, which are 2 high level of evidence pieces of literature. Makes it very convenient to know whether you want to look at that. You're going to see if you can access that article directly through a PDF or if there's some other means of access, like interlibrary loan, where we order the article for you. You'll notice if I click Show More here, you'll see more of the abstract. You'll also see the subject headings that I mentioned earlier, so that you know if you're in the right area for the terminology that you entered. If you want the citation for an article that you want to select for your APA reference list, you can always click on the article title. and then use the little quotation marks up in the upper right to gain access to the APA citation in the 7th edition format. And this can be copied and pasted into your paper. All searching takes a little bit of practice and getting used to the different sorts of databases that we have available. This was CINAHL in the EBSCOhost service, and now I'm going to show you the PubMed and Cochrane databases that you would also want to consider in your research for evidence-based literature. When you open the PubMed database, you will see a single search bar. You can enter all the terminology you need into that search bar, but you might have to group terminology together when you're using that, depending on your search. So in my example at the top, you'll see what I did was I took all of those synonyms and made a statement in parentheses with the ors, used the word and then continued on with the statements around hand washing, or the keywords around hand washing, and created a separate grouping of terminology for hand washing. So that's a little more complicated, but easily done in the single search box if needed. In PubMed, when looking at the results set, you'll see the article listing in the center, and then all of the limits for PubMed are along the side, and they stay with you in the results list on the left there. So from here, I can make adjustments to the date range by clicking those buttons. If you do want evidence-based literature in PubMed, what you want to do is use the article types to get at those articles. So by clicking systematic review, meta-analysis, randomized controlled trial, that would give you the levels 1 and 2 evidence for the hierarchies that you would be interested in. By clicking the title of any article in PubMed, you can gain access to the full text, typically the icons on the upper right. You can use the cite feature there to switch to an APA citation and copy and paste that into your paper. There is much more information as you scroll down through any article, including similar articles that may not have come up in your original search, who cited that article, perhaps references, and the subject headings as listed in PubMed through the mesh terms list. So explore this when you can. PubMed is a very powerful resource. When you graduate from Regis, you would not have access to EBSCOhost, but you would have access to PubMed. So please take advantage of using that while you're a student here. Next, we'll look at the Cochrane Library. So remember, you click find the link on the Nursing Research Guide. The Cochrane Library includes the Systematic Review database. Cochrane systematic reviews are considered the gold standard of systematic review. Also in the Cochrane Library, you will find the trials database. Primarily when you find results for your PICO questions in Cochrane, you'll find them either under the Cochrane Review section or the trials section. There's a tiny search box here in the upper right hand that you can enter terms in, but I always recommend you click the advanced search button so that you get more space to type. In my case, I already pre-populated this for this demonstration, and I used the exact same search as I did in PubMed, grouping the synonyms for my P and my I section into this search box. There's some other ways to search in here, because you can see tabs for Search Manager, using the mesh searching, or a PICO search option to search your PICO question in parts. So I will click the Run Search here to show you what a Cochrane search looks like. what comes up is a tabbed page. If there are any Cochrane reviews, those will show up first under that section. The trials usually is the next one, and those are usually higher in number. All of the filters for Cochrane are on the left side. So if you want to enter the 5-year date range, you can put the specific date in here. You can also add in some other parameters as down below. When you open a Cochrane review, if you do have one, you will see that they're pretty comprehensive. They have what's called an HTML version, which is the version you can just read on the screen. It's laid out very organized with a plain language summary and all the details below. You can use the table of contents here on the right to pop around through the document, or you can download the PDF of the document. Just be aware that these can be larger files that are rather lengthy. So that's what we'll cover in this section. We reviewed the PICO question, turning your PICO question into a searchable statement, and searching some of the library databases for the evidence. In the next video, we'll cover the critical analysis of the literature.